Hi, it's Hazel, and welcome to my channel, Hazel and Aka Design. This is the next part in the scrap busting with fabric little mini series that I've put together. Now, I don't know, I don't want to scare you. I don't want to get you too excited. I don't want to mislead you. This thing that I'm showing you here is a cover that I made a long time ago using, obviously, fabric scraps and many teeny tiny little scraps. And if you can, let me just get these other things out of the way. If you can see, there's also been some slow stitching done on there. You know, some little stylized flowers, some blanket stitch. That's probably it. And a whip stitch. Now, I did this probably 3 years ago, and I got hooked. And I did, I think, maybe 7 total different colorways, because of course half the joy to me is selecting the fabrics and putting the colors together. So I have used some of them. I have shown these in the past, but I thought it was apropos to show them again. Now, in typical Hazel fashion, because I want to be as honest and transparent as possible, there are some definite lessons that I learned from doing this. I'll show you another one that I have handy here, and same thing applies, because of course I did these one right after another. This one has way more stitching on it. Got cantha stitch, there's a bit of running stitch, French knots. I've forgotten what these things are called. This was when I was taking part in or hooked on Roxy's Journal of Stitchery, and that was her very first one, I believe. So kind of got all excited about doing that again. And again, you can see that I have some pretty small pieces here, or what appear to be small pieces. Anyway, these are beautiful. They will make good journal covers at some point. However, I have learned a thing or two since then. And we're not talking about slow stitching today, but we are talking about using fabric pieces to make a journal cover. Oh, I should also tell you that it is just those fabrics, those novelty, or those, pretty fabrics attached to, like, probably this is an old sheet or something. Now, obviously, to be used as a cover, this would need to be covered with probably another fabric to, kind of smooth over the knots and so on. Same thing with this one. So that's kind of what the back looks like. So what have I learned? Well, this is what I did the other day. And I think this looks pretty darn good. Now, of course, should I decide to add more to it in terms of slow stitching and the man hours that come with that, I have a really good basis here. So, number one, where did the fabrics come from? Number two, what have I learned? And so on and so on. So I think I might have mentioned that I bid on a lot of vintage bedding. Many, many, many sheet sets that had, well, I would say 9.5 out of 10 hadn't even been opened. They were still in their original packaging. Brands and stores that are no longer in business even. So I had to do something with all that fabric. So what I did, and what I did was I made up bundles for my Where do I have these listed? Well, by the time you see this, these should be listed in Maker's Market, Coffee Shop, and Etsy. So this is the pink colorway. So, I mean, didn't we all have a sheet set like this? These are all fat quarters, by the way. This is more shabby looking. This is more, on a white ground, so it looks different. And I have to say that these fabrics, I thought I had them all folded in the same direction, that these, and there's a solid pink, that these fabrics are a far cry from what we we expect in our bedding these days. There is no 600 thread count here, let me tell you that. But it was, 50 years ago that some of this stuff was popular or was on the market. So it's not surprising that things have changed. But the reason these appeal to us is because there's that sense of nostalgia. There's that disbelief that somebody actually bought a sheet set in the 70s and never opened the package. Now, where, all of these, except maybe this one, were brand new. So I didn't launder them. So they still are crisp and have their sizing in them. I also put together a Shades of Yellow bundle. Now you can see, do you remember this? This is well worn, washed and soft and so on. The others are crispy and new. And then there's also a blue bundle, and you'll get a look at that, like what's included in that. Okay, so what have I learned? Well, I learned that unlike these, what I did here, I don't know if I didn't know any better or if I was afraid I was going to create bulk. I had some of these things. I wish I could find an example to show you. There is virtually, or can we peek behind here? Virtually no overlap with some of those pieces, or so little that, and of course, what you don't see is that once had all these scraps, decided on the arrangement, they were all pinned down with stick pins. And then they were hand basted, hand stitched onto this backing fabric to hold it all together till the more decorative stitches were added. So that's a fair bit of handling. And that's kind of a shaky foundation when you think about it, especially if there isn't much overlap. So what I did here, number one, I picked a piece of cardstock that matches the colorway that is being used here. So I picked a pink. It's 12 by 12. So of course I can't make 12 inches longer than 12 inches. So, but I did have a little bit of leeway with the other measurement. So I cut it at 9 1/4, just to give it a little bit extra. So then, because some of these have a really white background and because they're fairly thin, you can see a pinkish cast underneath. This is really a loose weave here. So that's fine. It just looks like another level of color. But you can see that over here I've overlapped at least half an inch. Here it's at least that much. And I think that's sort of maybe a happy medium. I didn't have to worry about, are these things going to separate? Now, what I did in this case that was different from the slow stitching one is that I glued, first of all, I putzed around and putzed around and putzed around. Now, yes, these bundles are what you would get if you bought them. But I, of course, had a whole bunch of cutoffs. You know, all the odd sized and shaped pieces that you get when you're cutting up sheets and pillowcases and so on. My least favorite, of course, were the fitted sheets. And then, of course, you get a measurement. You figure out, oh, this is how the way you do a double flat sheet. And then, oh, this package is just a twin. Oh, okay. Anyway, so I had those little issues, which, of course, that all that labor, all that figuring, all that work is obviously factored into the price of these bundles as well, because number one, I located them. Number one, I invested my money, hope to recoup it, blah, blah, blah. And I did the work of preparing this. So, you buy one, you get a nice, neat bundle, and you go to it, baby. Now, I chose not to use the solid pink because it just seemed like it jumped out at me. But, of course, that could be used on the inside when the time comes. So anyway, I had pieces. I wanted kind of a distribution of color. I think if I don't count the solid, I think there are 7 different ones. So I kind of laid it out in a way, also imagining how the cover might look. So I thought, I really like those, I really like those, I really like those. Well, I like them all, but how might the cover turn out? And repeating elements. And I also, you'll see, didn't make these little teeny weeny, 1-inch squares, because I'm so much smarter now. So that's, okay, so I laid it out, figured out what is underneath. So I would have glued this square down first. And I had them extend just 1/8 of an inch or so beyond the edge of the cardstock. Because, again, if something goes awry, you don't want to have to wish that you had an extra 1/8 of an inch. It's better to do it and trim it off. And that's exactly what I did. So I glued it down. And I thought, okay, I've pulled out the fabric. I'm doing this. I thought I might do part of it on video. And then I thought, okay, who are you kidding? This is not going to be conducive to showing on video. So I did a second one completely. Again, background paper. Well, they're not even the same colors. Did the positioning of the flowers. Wait, did I think? Oh, I should also tell you. Well, let me tell you right. Well, now that I remember this. Okay, so typically if I was sewing around a journaling card, I start in the lower left corner. And if I leave the threads dangling, so be it. And if I cut them off, so be it. When I do a journal cover, I start in what I believe to be the middle bottom, because I'm thinking, if this is how the journal turns out, this is probably the least conspicuous spot. So I start there, I backstitch, and then I come around the perimeter and I backstitch again. Didn't overlap that much, but just enough that it's secure. Stitched as close to the edge as I could, because even though I had a really nice, unlike the things I showed you in the last video, which was these, this worked beautifully just with glue stick. I didn't worry about a nice sharp edge. If there were these little frayed edges, I thought that just added to the sort of shabbiness of it. Now, of course, at this point, I could still add slow stitching. I could sandwich some lace in between this front cover and whatever will be done on the inside. I could do some crazy stitching. I chose instead to just glue, or not glue, sew along the shapes. Hey, I missed an inch there. You know, you think you got it just so. Anyway, had really good adhesion, so that gave me some confidence. Stuck them under this plastic protector here that's on my desk overnight to you know, not that there was any weight on it, but it just, I think, helped keep it quite flat. Did the second one, same scenario, you know, different layout. Now, you know, there might be some of these odd threads still to pull at some point. You hope that eventually that stops. Again, put it under the little thing, and then, only then, in the next day when it was dry, did I trim the excess fabric. So again, I did that by flipping it over and using sharp scissors, cut along the edge. Now there's still some little threads poking out. You know, it's kind of a never-ending job, to be honest. So because I liked the look of these, and I thought, you know, that was pretty quick. And look what a nice handmade, homemade result it is. And it's not finished with the decorating either. The other thing that I tried to keep in mind was that, okay, here's where I start. So this is what I intended for my front cover. I also didn't want to put the very most beautiful stuff right in the middle, or my favorites right in the middle, is because, you know, there could very well be a journal topper added to it, in which case a lot of that would be covered up. So that's what I did there. Now, of course, it might have been more secure to zigzag, and I haven't ruled that out, but I did just want to anchor it for the time being. Because frankly, if if lace is added, that'll be another row of stitching. And even though, well, this doesn't look like great work, does it? I probably should have had a longer stitch, maybe. But you know, when you sew through paper, you get these little bump outs and these little, it perforates it. So I'm not ruling out zigzagging the perimeter, but I just didn't want to, you know, sew this to within an inch of its life and then find out that, you know, the paper is breaking away or something. So, because of course I was on a roll, I thought, well, okay, let me do the blue kit. And that's what I did. Let's see if I can remember which one I did first. Oh, I did this one next. So you can see that this, okay, so I said in the pink kit there were 8 pieces, but I only used 7 different ones. Now the blue kit is a smaller kit, which meant it was a little more challenging. Whoops, in that, you know, you don't have as much variety, so you kind of have to be maybe a little more careful with your fabric placement. Again, you can see I used some pretty big pieces. There were some very light ones, like this part especially of the design is just this tiny little dot on this white field. This has a lot of vibrant color, but there's also a lot of white space. So I wanted to try to get what looks like a reasonable balance of lights versus darks. Don't know if I really succeeded or not, but I'm still happy with the result. Again, these flowers would not all be covered by a journal topper. Oh, by the looks of it, I used a much longer stitch here, so that is better for the paper, obviously. Also had really good adhesion and also overlapped, you know, a sensible amount. Also left the fringes again. And then this was the final one. So look at how light this is. And there was basically a wide open white space there, so I just put that little dot in there. Like I said, the plucking continues. So this is what this one would look like. Now these fabric journals are great because a 9x12, which is essentially what this is, you end up with kind of a, obviously a tactile fabric cover, and it's pretty well the perfect size for a one signature journal. And the nice part about it is, because you'll notice that I haven't folded it and make a nice sharp crease in it, because I just find that it's kind of better that you don't do that until you actually have your signatures in it and get a feel for, and even then you probably don't want a sharp crease, because if your marks for your stitching where you're sewing in your signature are slightly off, then it's going to be obvious that you've missed the fold. Whereas if you keep it sort of rounded, you've got a little cheating space if you need it. So basically, that is it for what I wanted to tell you today, or show and tell you today. So I guess my point is and again, just because of who I am and my preferences, I prefer to do this. However, or this. I mean, now I'm talking pattern color selection. Now with this one, all these, yes, there are gradations. There's solid there. This is essentially a jacquard, a tone-on-tone thing. I think that's why I added as much slow stitching as I did, to give it more texture. It also tends to make it more substantial. Now, if eclectic and if, bold in your face color is what you prefer, then by all means do what you prefer. Do what you prefer and based on what you already have. So I didn't cut into one of these bundles to get this. I used, cut-offs, pieces that were, now this isn't really quite a nice size scrap. I don't know if you can, I guess you can still call it a scrap, but wouldn't this make cute little journal covers? And there's a lot here. I mean, I could get probably a dozen out of this if I played my cards right. So there's that. Then, you end up with something like this. And because I took the hem down, quite often there is, the holes are there, but again, I don't know that that's an issue. But sometimes there's such a permanent crease that you almost can't get it out. Oh, I should also tell you, I didn't, as much as I like ironing, I didn't want to, run across the house, set up the ironing board and the iron. So I just used my little I think it's actually a travel iron, and I have like a silicone, no, it's not silicone. One of those heat reflective, an ironing pad basically. And I just did it on my desk, making sure not to warp my plastic or my cutting board or set my desk ablaze. Now I do have other pink scraps, and certainly many more scraps. You can see that. Can you tell that I thrifted a bunch of masks, COVID masks that had been pieced together but not sewn, or had been cut and not sewn? So I'm going to have fun with some of these, plus some of my own fabrics that I added. So there's no shortage of little scraps. But back to kind of the pieces that I have. So I didn't throw away the parts I didn't use, because these can be snippets or pockets or something. Now this one has a fair bit of green and yellow in it, so I chose to choose the parts of the pattern that were more blue and teal than yellow and green. But, you know, it's like most things that we do. We think we're scrap busting. Now these rosebuds, oh, let me finish the thought. We think we're scrap busting, but in fact, I made a whole bunch more. So again, what I'm going to do with the smallest ones is store them with the covers. So in other words, pin this all together, clip it all together, whatever method I decide on, so that when it comes time to decorate this thing, these little bits can be used either for snippets or clusters or whatever. You know, should I have saved this? I don't know. I guess if this was the last piece of fabric on earth, it would be, I'd be a genius. You know, so something as big as this could be a cover in its own right. But until I put these pieces away, they're kind of all still here. That vibrant color is quite the thing. This, and look at again how crooked this is. So I talked about that in the last video, you know, what you do when you're confronted with something like that. I'm trying not to really put big or sharp creases into these things, because I did do that ironing, you know, here at my desk. But like I said, the smallest pieces, well, probably all of this will stay together until that journal is completed. And then obviously the same thing with the pink ones. And I'm glad that I'm doing the this video, because now I can get it off my beside me here. Now this fabric had a variety of colors in it, so I kind of zeroed in on the pinkest parts of it. But these are lovely as well, you know, the mauve and the sort of the teal and the, you know, soft gray. So there is so much to use that you can obviously make many, many projects. So I will stop there, and I hope that you run, don't walk, to your scrap area and figure out what it is that you want to make with the scraps that you have. Are they big scraps? Do you want to do a journal cover? Are you going to sew ruffles? Are you going to... one thing I haven't talked about yet is a snippet roll, but that day will probably come as well. But I hope that this has encouraged you to look at what you have and figure out how to maximize what you have. And again, if you're so inclined, if these covers are still sitting around in your space when the snow flies, maybe you decide to take up some slow stitching this winter. Never say never. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for being here. And as always, I would ask that you please subscribe, that you give me a thumbs up, and that you comment with questions, suggestions, girls, whatever it is that you want to say. That is the basis of our relationship. Thanks, guys. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.